Hello everyone, it's your favorite friendly neighborhood infidel, Dom Azarel. And yes, I'm banned on one account, but that's not the reason why I'm making this video. I recently received an email from a distressed gentleman who was concerned with my categorical perspective of Islam. And so, since nobody has ever disagreed with me before on anything I have to say about Islam, then I had to address it by video. And if you didn't catch the sarcasm in that, then this is going to be a really long video. But, so I wanted to address a couple of things. I don't have an interpretation of Islam. It doesn't matter if I did. Moderate Muslims' interpretation doesn't matter. Your interpretation doesn't matter. The historians, the researchers, the scholars, ISIS, it doesn't matter what interpretation of Islam they have. There's only one person in the history of the world whose interpretation matters, and that is Muhammad. The Islamic prophet Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, the Uswa Hasana, that's Allah's perfect example for which Muslims are supposed to live their lives. Anything that you don't understand about Islam, any scripture in the Quran that just doesn't make sense, you don't know how to take it, you're hoping there's a different interpretation of it, all you have to do is look at the hadith and see how Muhammad walked out that scripture. What did he do? What was his interpretation? Now, we can find that out by looking there and seeing what he said and what he did. Now, one of those things is Muhammad was a beheader. Is this true? Was he a warlord? Was he this crazy psychopath who murdered innocent people, and that's the way that Islam is supposed to be? Well, we can find out right here. I have it in Ishaq Hisham 674, if you want to look that up. There is a small reference to it in the Quran, verse 33:26. It talks about the Banu Qurayza tribe. This was this Israelite Jewish tribe. They were peaceful. They lived with all the other tribes around Medina just fine. But when Muhammad came to Medina as a refugee, when he was chased out of Mecca for his warmongering and his intolerance and his hate speech and his attempt to get people to revolt and go to war against all the tribes, Medina took him in, unfortunately, to their demise. Muhammad, brought more of his friends over, built his following, amassed troops, and then he started butchering the tribes surrounding Medina. One of those tribes, the Banu Qurayza, is very famous for their massacre. What had happened was Muhammad had approached the leader of that tribe, and he had demanded that they pledge allegiance to him and his troops. And the tribe did not, they didn't want to do this. They wanted to remain neutral. They didn't want to get into any war that he had with any of the other tribes around or with Mecca. So they denied it. They said, no, we're going to remain neutral. Muhammad wouldn't have this, so he and his troops tied up all the men and all the boys, and they checked the boys for pubic hair. And if they had it, that meant that they were old enough to be considered a man. And they were all slaughtered one by one, side by side. A trench was dug. Each one was beheaded one by one, around the clock for hours at a time, for days, until around 800 were finally slaughtered. This is particularly disturbing because not only were children involved, but Muhammad's own Aisha, his child bride, was recorded as sitting next to him watching these beheadings. And in Abu Dawood 2665, she says, I will not forget that she was laughing extremely, though she knew that she would be killed. Aisha is here talking about one of the women who was beheaded along with the men. She was actually watching this at about 12 years old at the time, next to her prophet husband. But of course, if you're raped at age 9, which all the hadith agree is the age, even from her own lips, she states that she was 9 years old when she consummated her marriage with the prophet. And that seems kind of like maybe she was desensitized to it. Now, after Muhammad had sat through all the beheadings and every last one of the men and boys were beheaded, there was all these women and girls left over. And what did Muhammad do with them? Well, they were used as sex slaves for he and his troops. Now, being the leader, Muhammad got to pick the most beautiful women for himself. So he chose Rihanna. Now, Rihanna was the wife of one of the tribesmen. She watched her husband beheaded right in front of her, and then the man who ordered the beheading took her to his tent and raped her. Now, Muslims all the time try to justify this by saying, no, she embraced Islam, no, she was in love with the Prophet, no, it was a willing marriage. But I want you to think about this. Her husband was beheaded. Her friends were beheaded. Brothers, uncles, grandfather, whatever. The entire tribe, all that she knew, beheaded right before her very eyes. Do you think that she's going to go into this tent willingly and sleep with the man who ordered all this carnage? No, of course not. The same thing happened with Safiya. Safiya was a 17-year-old girl, very beautiful. Her father and her brother were beheaded from the order of Muhammad. Do you think that this 17-year-old girl, having witnessed her brother and her father beheaded right in front of her, all of her family, friends beheaded, is going to fall all over this man who ordered the slaughter of her family? Of course not. It's utter nonsense to think that anybody would be okay with that. She had to. She was forced to. Now, this is where the Quranic scripture 4:24 came from, when Muhammad said, "And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hand possesses." This is a very famous scripture. A lot of times Muslims will say, no, it doesn't mean captives. It's still talking about wives, because on your right hand you, I don't know, wear a wedding ring? I sure don't. I believe that's on your left hand. Anyway, this is when he quoted the scripture. His companions came to him because they were reluctant to have intercourse with the slaves they had just accumulated, because they were in the presence of the tribesmen. That means that some of these tribesmen, some of the husbands, the fathers, the brothers, the sons, were still alive, being butchered one at a time, when the companions, the troops of Muhammad, were taking their wives and their daughters and their sisters as sex slaves. So, to comfort them, to assure them that this was okay and this was the will of Allah, that's exactly when Muhammad quoted that scripture. That's pretty disgusting if you ask me. But if you want to look it up, you don't have to take my word for it. This is in Abu Dawud 2150, also in Muslim 3433. It's a quick Google, and it's not from any conservative site. This is just from sites that upload the hadith. You can read it in Arabic. You can read it in English. You can read it in any language. Next, we have how Muhammad treated blasphemers, how Muhammad treated the people who mocked and insulted him. Abu Dawud 14:2678. Muhammad ordered his men to kill Fartana, the slave girl, because she used to recite poems insulting Muhammad. Abu Dawud, same scripture, 14:2678. Muhammad ordered his men to kill Qurayba because she used to recite poems insulting Muhammad. Tabari, Volume 8, History of Islam. Muhammad ordered his men to kill Sarah because Muhammad claimed that she used to molest him while he was in Mecca. Abu Dawud 33:4153. Muhammad ordered his men to kill Hind bint Utbah for cutting out the heart of Muhammad's uncle Hamza after he died during the Battle of Uhud. Abu Dawud 38 4348. Muhammad ordered his men to kill a blind man's wife because she insulted him. I don't know how to justify any of this. Yes, it is a crime under Sharia law. It's backed up by the Quran, it's backed up by the Hadith, that you do not insult the Prophet of Islam. But killing a wife of a blind man, killing young slave girls because they came up with limericks that made fun of him. This is insanity. This is not a peaceful man. This is not a logical man. This is a paranoid crybaby who just also happened to be a mass murderer. This is what we're talking about. This is the man who Muslims are commanded to follow. I didn't command them to follow this man. I don't want them to follow this man. If I could give a message to all the Muslim world, I would say, look at your man that you are supposed to follow. Look at Allah's perfect example and leave him. Do not follow him. Do not do what he did. But I don't have any authority to do that. You don't either, and the moderate Muslims do not, and peaceful Muslims do not. Allah has the authority here, or so Muhammad says, because Muhammad revealed everything to the people that allegedly Allah commanded. There was nobody there to witness any of these revelations. There was nobody around to hear the angel Gabriel give him these revelations. There were no miracles performed to prove that he was the prophet. In fact, when he died from poison, the Jewish woman who brought it to him said that if he was really the prophet Muhammad, if he was really the messenger of Allah, he would not be killed by poison from a Jewish slave. He ingested the poison and he died in Aisha's arms. If logic were used more in Islam, I know that more Muslims would leave it. I know that they would take a look at themselves and say, what kind of a God am I worshiping? Is he even real? I'm simply taking Muhammad's word for it. Muhammad, who performed no miracles, who claimed to have done miracles, who claimed to have gone to the heavens on a winged horse with a woman's face, who claimed to have visited hell. No witnesses. There's no reason other than Muhammad said, a man who murdered and raped and pillaged. And just simply for that fact, I cannot understand why anyone would want to follow Islam. Other than the fact that logic, questioning, is not only discouraged, it is illegal. If you go to a Muslim country where Sharia law is practiced, and you question something to an imam, maybe ask a question, say, I don't understand, why do we follow Muhammad if there were no witnesses, there were no miracles? It's simply just because he said. Word gets around to the government, you'll be put to death. A blasphemer, an apostate, whatever excuse that they give. Insulting the Prophet, maybe. I really pray that Muslims watch this video. I hope that it does anger them. I hope that it outrages them. I hope that they begin to question their religion and begin to look for themselves. They don't have to take my word for it. I just want people to start thinking.